actually really hate it when the days get shorter and the nights get longer. I find it so dark. It's dark when I wake at 6:30, and later when I walk the dog at 4:30 or 5, it's dark again. And I always feel a little slow and sluggish. Yet I know this is necessary. I'm grateful that the earth is still turning on its axis, tilting away from the sun. I'm grateful for the change of seasons, for the needed winter rains. I remind myself to just be with the darkness, not to fight it. And so I take time to rest and listen to music that I love. I remind myself that all life comes from the darkness, from fecund darkness. We were each conceived in the darkness of our own mother's womb, and maybe during a dark night. The cosmos itself is born out of darkness and the void, the place of all possibilities. From fecund darkness she brings forth all, dancing form into being. From the poet Dintino. When we reflect on the birthing of the cosmos and the earth herself, we observe that the creative process requires a necessary not knowing, failure, false starts, stumbling around, requires darkness. It seems that stumbling in the dark is a necessary requirement for allowing new possibilities to emerge. Otherwise, we simply continue to repeat what we've done before. But we have become so reliant on the light, so much so that from deep space you can see that all our lights are turned on. And when we go for a walk at nighttime, it is so hard to see the stars because of the city lights. Christianity itself has seldom had a good thing to say about darkness. In fact, it has tended to demonize it. Christians frequently use the term darkness as shorthand for sin, evil, ignorance, death. There is divine light, and then there's darkness. This binary approach limits our understanding of the divine. This language of opposition places half of reality closer to God and the other half further away. Light and dark, sacred and the profane, spirit and flesh. It limits our understanding of the beloved oneness that holds all that is. Christianity often focuses on the sunny side of life, as if the divine were not present in the dark. But this theology does not reflect the reality of our lives. Each of us has experienced emptiness, no matter how hard we have meditated or prayed. We've felt alone and afraid, and we've sometimes despaired that we will ever see a just and green society. Are these experiences to be understood as the absence of God? I think not. Barbara Brown Taylor says, "When light fades and darkness falls, God does not turn the world over to some other deity. Even when we cannot see where we are going and no one seems to hear us, it doesn't mean that God is not listening and God is not present. There is a presence that transcends all our limited ideas about it." Fortunately, the Christian mystics have written eloquently about the divine darkness. In the 16th century, the Christian mystic John of the Cross spent 11 months in solitary confinement. He had been thrown into prison by his Carmelite brothers. John had been trying to reform this order of men, and they didn't like it, so they threw him in prison. And while in that darkness, without sight or sound, without human companionship, in a place of isolation, in lockdown, if you will, John experienced the presence of divine love. I think this experience can be a source of encouragement for us today in these times. Without paper or pen, John memorized what he was experiencing, and finally a jailer took pity on him and gave him writing materials. From his writings, we learn about the dark night of the soul. Those times when we are asked to abandon our tried and true understanding of who and how God is, and enter into holy ignorance, enter into not knowing. We are asked to open to the possibility that the Divine Beloved exists in the darkness, and indeed speaks to us through the darkness. We're going to explore some lines from John's poem on the dark night of the soul, and our Canadian composer, Lorena McKinnott, has put these words to music if you look her up. John describes how the journey begins, going into the dark. It is a descent, and I quote, "in darkness and secure by a secret ladder." There is a descending, a letting go, a going within. And we recall that John did not choose to go into isolation and confinement and darkness. There is often in life a necessary falling, a descent, a letting go. Richard Rohr says, "The way down is the way up." Some kind of falling is necessary. It's programmed into the human journey. None of us goes through this life without experiencing times of loss and sorrow and suffering. Throughout the poem, John praises the night. "Oh, that glad night, with no other light or guide than the one that burned in my heart. This guided me more surely than the light of noon to where he was awaiting me." These are words of consolation and hope. John affirms that even in our darkest night, we are guided each by the light that burns within our own hearts, our own inner wisdom. That even when we can't find God outside, she whispers deep within. Of course, this requires that we take some time to listen, but also to trust our deep selves. John goes on, "O guiding night, O night more lovely than the dawn, O night that has united the lover with the beloved to transforming each into the other." During COVID, each of us is individually experiencing possibly a dark night or some experience of it, a time of confinement, of isolation and darkness. And as we look ahead, the road to recovery seems very long indeed. And yet John reminds us to stop resisting the dark, that when we learn to live with it, that this can become a guiding night. This can be a time of listening to our deep selves, of recognizing the presence of the Beloved in all that is, within our sorrows and frustration, in the wind that blows through the naked trees, in the generosity of others, in the loving voice of a friend. What would it look like to be with the darkness? And where is the Divine Beloved showing up for us, perhaps in ways that we had not experienced until now? John encourages us. He says this time of darkness can be transforming, where we begin to experience ourselves as part of God, part of the great mystery, as an integral part of all that is. No longer isolated, no longer alone. O night that has united the lover with the beloved, transforming each into the other. We are collectively going through this dark night, and just as we sit in a dark room and our eyes begin to adjust to see things that are there, this is beginning to happen to us collectively in this dark night. We begin to see more clearly the cracks in our social safety net, seniors dying within our care facilities, the absence of secure housing for all, the increase of people dying from overdose. We have the opportunity to be transformed by this. I think we can already see the indications of this transformation. In the midst of these times, we are witnessing incredible generosity and caring. Healthcare workers caring for us putting their own lives at risk. Political leaders working tirelessly to find solutions to the pandemic, to addiction, and to the housing crisis. Each of us caring for those around us, aware that people are feeling isolated, fragile, tender, worn. Perhaps this pandemic will become for us a guiding night. O guiding night. O night more lovely than the dawn. O night that has united the lover with the beloved, transforming each into the other. May it be so.